I'm going to show you some of the best functions for data analysis using the Pandas library. This is one of the greatest libraries you can use in Python for a job as a data analyst. It's quick, it's powerful, there are tons of functions. So we were going to go through some of the top functions. So let's get started. I have a Jupyter notebook open, and we're going to go through about 10 functions, but you're going to get some bonus ones also. The first thing you need to do is import pandas. We can just import pandas. We don't have to save it as the variable PD, but it's often better to do that. And what we're going to do is we're going to learn how to read in data, describe data, look at data frame info, merge tables, value count, remove duplicates, fill missing values, grouping data, sorting values, and converting data types. So it'll be pretty comprehensive. Let's talk about reading in data because it's one of the most important things you can do because you need to bring data into your Jupyter Notebook or Spider, whatever your development environment is using Python. So we're going to use some functions there and some of the common data types that you read it, data formats that you read in are Excel and a CSV. So I'm going to go over to where I have the heading reading data. I'm going to press escape and then B to create a cell under that. And now what we're going to do, we have imported our package pandas. We saved it as PD. And once I have PD in, you can see that there's some IntelliSense there. That's not native to Jupyter Notebook, but you can add that in. I'll show you how to do that with a description in the description box. Okay, so we're going to use a read function, and there's many types of read functions. So I'm going to type in read. You can see we can read from the clipboard, CSV, Excel, quite a lot of data types, but more than likely you'll be reading in a CSV file or an Excel file for the most part as a data analyst. So functions are always encapsulated with those parentheses. So now that I have my function there, what I can do is write in the path where my function exists, or you can go over, find where that is. So I know I have this file that I want to read in. So it's a holiday file. So what I can do is I can shift and right click and then copy as a path, go back over to my Jupyter Notebook, and then I can copy and paste this in. And you can see the format there where it gives us the total path. Now, one thing you need to realize that these slashes are escape slashes. So you need to change the direction of each one of these. Now, I'm doing it pretty manually, but you can always just open up a Notepad++ or something and just find and replace. So now that I've read that in, I'm going to press Shift and Enter. And now you can see we have an error because I didn't write what we were going to read in. We're going to read in the CSV, so we need to pass it the format, so underscore CSV. And let's shift and run that again. And you can see I can immediately see that data that I have. Next, what I'm going to do is save this as a variable. So I just add df to it, and I shift and run that again. Shift enter, and now I have it. Now let's also read in another data, Excel. So we can read in df2, let's save it as that. We can use our pandas variable and say read Excel. Get our look at the documentation by pressing Shift Tab. And you can see when we're reading in Excel, there's also a sheet name in Excel. And if we open up an Excel file, we know there's different tabs, and that's going to be our sheet name. So if I open up, let's say I open up a file. So I've opened up a file that has two tabs here. There's the data here in a tab, and then there's a dictionary for some of the data here. So let's bring in this particular file. So we just need to locate this. We can do the same thing, Shift, copy as path, go over, read in Excel. Of course, we can change the directions. Now, if this is in your working directory, you don't need to copy the path. But you can see there's a different file type here. And now we indicate the sheet name. So our sheet name equals, then we put our quotations, and the sheet name is data. I'm going to run that. And you can see that ran. Now, what if we wanted to see that? All you would need to do is just write df2, and what that's going to do, it's going to run that file again, and you'll be able to see all the data in it. So df2, and we can see there's the data that we brought in. So let's just get rid of that and run that. So now I'm going to go back to our describing data, escape and B. And I want to be able to describe the data. So what does this function do? This is a great function for any analyst because it's going to give you the mean, the median, and mode and standard deviation of data. So if I use our first saved data frame that I saved as df, I can use the .describe function. So I close that off with my parentheses. You can see if I press Shift Tab, there are parameters that we use. So we can include percentiles or not, but let's just run this and you can see that it's going to generate descriptive statistics. So I run that, and what it's going to do is take all the data types that I have that are numerical and run that. So we're looking at the holiday data set. So you're looking at a month, date, and year. That's not going to really help us. We know what this data is just going to tell us how much these statistics are. But if we run that over our second data frame, which is dealing with absenteeism at work, you can see we get a whole list of different data. So now that I've run that, you can see if we wanted to see the age and we wanted to look at some of the statistics, we can get the count, the mean, and the standard deviation. And you can see that. Now we can also isolate the column that we're looking at to make it a little bit more easier. Or we can press .t to transpose this so we can see it in a different way. So this would be easier to see if with .t. So if I go to age, we can see the average age in the mean here is 36. For people who are absent at work, there's a standard deviation of about 6. The minimum age is 27, and then we can see our max age is 58. That is a great function to use that will provide you with all of the different information based on the numerical data in your data frame or data set. So now we know we have a data frame. Let's get some info on that. So again, I'm going to press Escape and B to get a new cell, and I can take that data frame 2 and press Info and have my particular parentheses to run that function. And let me just drag this up a bit. Run that, and now we get info. What kind of info that we're going to get? We're going to get the shape of the data. So the shape of the data is the number of columns and the number of rows. So we can see all the columns. We can see if we have null, and we can see all of the different data types that are really important once we start doing some analysis. And we can see everything here is an integer. And this is why when we ran this descriptive statistics, we could get all of the columns. We won't get this for anything that is a string or object or categorical data type. We may want to see just the top of the data frame. So let's go down to the bonus section here. And what we can do is we can say we want to see the head of the data. And we can always turn that into a docustring. And I'm just going to press escape and B. So I run that. And I just want a couple more cells, so escape and BBB. So let's put some df2. We want to be able to look at the top of the data, and we can look at that using the head function. So that gives us the first 5 rows. The tail function will give us the last 5 rows. And you can see from my info here, if we come up, we can also see that we have a total of 739 entries, so we'll get the last ones there just by using those. So you can see the head of the data. But before we merge data, what we want to do is look at the value count. So what is the value counts doing? Let's go here. We press escape and B, and we can look at the value counts. And what the value counts are going to count each separate value there. So we have a data frame that is the holiday data set. And if we looked at the head of that data, we can do df head. So we can see that these are the data types by pressing what? df.info. And if you run this in Jupyter Notebooks, you're going to get the last function. You can see there's 2 functions there, but you can see the one that you see up here is the particular one where we have info. So we have 342, and we have 3 objects and 3 different data types here that are integers. So if we wanted to count maybe all of the object data, we could use value counts. So I'm going to make escape and B to get another one. And I'm going to just get my particular data frame. And what I want to do is isolate a column. So I'm going to use the brackets to isolate the column. And the column I want to know about is, maybe I want to know how many Sundays exist in this data set. So I am going to use weekday as the column that I'm interested in. Then I'm going to use the function value counts. I can see there's 76 Sundays in this data set. So Sunday and Monday are the most frequent days in this data set. We can also always press Shift Tab to see what other parameters we can use. Now, maybe what I want to do is normalize this. And we normalize, and there's a Boolean, true or false. When we normalize it, that means we're putting everything kind of on the same scale. So in this case, what it's going to do is turn things into a percentage. So I'm going to shift and enter that. And we can see 31% of all the days in this data set are a Sunday. Next, let's look at removing duplicates, and then we'll come back up and we'll talk more about merging tables. So now that I have my removing duplicates, what I can do is go to this data set. I'm going to press escape and B. And you can always have your own data frame, and we can quickly build one of those. So let's build a quick data frame and maybe make some duplicates. So I'm going to build a data frame, and we can build a data frame using a dictionary. So the function that we want to use is the pd.dataframe. That's our function. And then we want to pass it some information. So I'm going to pass it a key, and the key would be the name of the column. So I'm going to pass this names maybe. And then I can use, because it's a dictionary, we have key and a value, right? So the value doesn't have to be one singular value. We can pass it a list. And the way you provide it as list is the same way we isolated that column with those brackets. So then I'm going to pass it a collection of the data types, which are going to be strings. So I'm going to call this Bill. And then I'm going to call this Jane. And they're all in quotations. And just Jane, Tom, and let's put another Bill. So now I have a data frame. If I shift and enter that, that data frame is there. And remember, we can look at the head of that data frame. It's only 5 rows. So we have a duplicate there. What if we wanted to remove the duplicates? So I have my data frame df3, and I could do drop underscore duplicates. Now, we can drop duplicates from all of the data frame, or we can just drop duplicates from names. And that's when you have this subset that you can put there. So I'm going to drop duplicates because we only have this particular data frame. Now, if you drop duplicates here, and let me open this up, you can see there's a parameter that says in place. In place means it's going to be saved. Because if you don't do this, it will not save. But you can do this in 2 different ways. We can resave the variable like this, or we can use in place. In place equals true. So I'm going to run that with Shift Enter. Now I'm going to access my df3 again. Shift and Enter. And you can see we don't have Bill there again. It has removed the duplicates. And of course, if you have a really large data frame, you want to be able to remove the duplicates there. All right. Let's go to filling in missing data. So we know we have a data frame, and if we look at the info, we can see we don't have any null. We have 740 entries and no nulls here. So this is what the info is going to tell us. We have 342 and no nulls here. So let's bring in a data frame that has a particular number of missing data that we can fill. So I'm going to go back up to where we're reading in data. And we know we have df3 already. So we're going to do df4. And I'm going to read in a data set. We're going to read in PD because we know we can use our Pandas read CSV. And we're going to read in. Now we don't need the path because we're going to use our working directory. So if you don't know what your working directory is, you can also find that out. I'm going to go down to our bonuses. I'm going to create a document string, find your working directory. And then what you can write is pwd, and you run that, pwd, and we shift and enter. So this can't be in the same line as a docu string. So let me just run that. And then now you can press pwd and shift and enter, and then you can see your working directory there. So let's go back and to our sections for filling missing data. We're going to bring in just the data file that we want. So we don't need the path because it's in our working directory. So it's hr data missing.csv. It's a CSV file. I'm going to shift and enter that to run it. I'm going to come back down to our section, filling missing data. I'm going to press escape and B to get some cells. So we know we have DF4. We can look at the head of our data. So we know that from our bonus section. We know we can look at the info of the data, and the info is going to really show us if we're missing, have any missing data. So let's take a look. So df.info, and let me pull that up. So let's take a look. We can see we have 0 to 15,003 rows. So in total, we have 15,004. But we can look at the number of projects where we have a data type float. And the hours, we can see the numbers are different. So in this section, number of projects, and where else? Also, the time at the company is also, we're missing, looks about 6 values. So I can isolate the particular column that we want to fill. So let's take a look at the values in this. So we can isolate the column that we're looking at. And let me pull this up so we have a little bit more space. So I'm going to isolate the column that I'm interested in, number of projects, number of projects, and then I can run that, and looks on, now it's not DF, it's DF4, and we can see that we have some missing values down there. So we can fill those missing values across the whole data frame, or we can do it in this particular column. So before we do that, let's talk about some other bonus techniques. So once we have the series or the column that we want, we can use some aggregation functions. And some of those aggregation functions are maybe mean. And see, if I run that, you can see I get the mean. And I can get the median. I run that. It's going to go through that whole column. So I can keep this as the median projects and save it as that data frame. And we're going to use that in a minute. All right. So let's also look at filling that data frame. So we can fill that particular column. So I'm just going to save time, I'm going to copy and paste this. And we can use the function fill NA. And now that we have that, we can press Shift Tab, and I can press this, and we can fill that method, okay? We can fill the NAs. So we saw the NAs when we looked at the tail of the data. And we can fill that with a value. So I think, why not fill it with the median value? So I'm going to use the median here. Now, I believe this should work by passing in a median project variable. So I'm going to press Shift Enter, and you can see all of those NAs have turned into the median there. So that's a great way to do it. You can fill it with a 0. You can input the value what you want, but that's a good trick that you can use to fill in some of the missing values, depending on what your use case is and if you're doing machine learning or something like that. So let's go down to grouping data. And I'm just going to eliminate a couple of these with the scissor here. I'm going to highlight grouping data, escape, and B. And let's talk about grouping data. And don't worry, I haven't forgot about merging data because that's going to take a little bit of effort. So I want to group our data first. So we know we have a couple different data frames. So let's just go up to the top. We know we have a holiday data frame, an absentee at work data frame, and an HR data frame where we have some missing values there. So how about we use our new data frame, which is DF4, and we group data. And grouping data is so important. So let's take a look. So I can use my data frame variable df4, and then I can use dot group by. And let's do shift tab to see what's going on. We can group it by what? So let's look at the data frame to get a better understanding of what we want to group by. So you know we can just go up one level and press df4 dot head, or we can do info. And I think in this case, let's do info so we can see. So maybe we want to group our data by, and when we group things, we usually want to group it by the data type object or a category. So if we grouped our data by salary or department, which would seem like a good one, let's see what happens. So I am going to isolate departments. And if I group it by that, let's just see what happens. So I group by department, and looks like there must be something going. It's department. Let's run that. And I believe there is a space next to department. So I'm just going to copy and paste that. And sometime that happens. And let's see if I'm able to get it just by copying and paste it directly out of that. So you can see when I copy and paste, there's a space there. So it's a very sensitive programming language. So if you have an extra space, it's going to matter. So now you can see if I run that, it tells me I have a group by object there. So that means I've grouped the data frame by that, but grouped what? So let's go and get one of our values here. How about number of projects? We know we filled that with that median value 4. So I'm just going to do number of projects. Number of projects. And let's run it again and see what happens. We still get an object. Why? Because, okay, if you group your data, that means you're going to smash all those values, just like a pivot table. You're going to smash all those values. So once you smash them, how do you want to see those values? You can see them using the sum, the median, the mode, similar to what we did earlier. So let's say we want to see the sum of projects by department. So now we're using an additional function, which is sum. If I run that now, you have the total number of projects by department. All right. So we've grouped that. Of course, we can change that to mean to get the average. So that's a great way to see which department has the total number. They're all about the same when it gets to the level that we're at. It looks all about, you know, if I round that up 4, if I change this to median, you can see the median is 4 and we put that in. If I change that to standard deviation so we can see maybe like the spread of the data, STD, you can see the standard deviation. So you can see this is pretty normally distributed. So let's just use sum there. All right, let's go over. We've grouped data. What have we have left? We have sort values. So this is a good way we can sort a data frame, or we can sort our particular group by. So all we're going to be doing is chaining these functions. So you see we have group by, one function. We isolated what we wanted to group by, and maybe we want to sort. we can see that the largest value is sales. So I'm going to do sort values. And then we have that function. Now, if I run that, it sorted the values. Because why? Because we're sorting the only thing that's there. And it's sorting, you can see in ascending. So we can always use ascending equals false. And now we get the highest number of projects per department. So here's a bonus. We keep chaining all these different functions. So maybe we can chain one more. Maybe we can use plot. And now we've plotted that data. So this is not a great plot to use, but we can use, and this plotting is based on matplotlib, but there's a little bit of matplotlib in Pandas. So if we press kind, and let's say I want a horizontal bar, now I have that. So you can see how we can chain things together. So let's just continue with our sorting. So that's a little bonus for you. And I want to escape and press B, bring this up. And what I want to do is sort a data frame by a particular column. So let's go up and look at our data frames. Let's just use our, let's just use DF4, which is our data frame. So we can, I'm going to give you an extra little function here that you can use. Well, this is not a function, it's just a method that you can use. We can type in columns and then we can get all the columns. So that's a data frame little method you can use. So let's use sort values. Now, if I press sort values and I press shift and tab, shift and tab, you can see I need to tell it how to sort. So I'm going to sort it by monthly hours. And I'm just going to copy and paste that. And remember we had that space in departments. You can see that there. And so if I sort by monthly hours, you can see that it's going by lowest to highest. And remember, we can always pass in ascending equals false to see it in the opposite direction. And now we can see the monthly hours are the highest there. That's a good way to sort your data frame. All right, we're going to convert data types, and then guess what we're going to do? Go back up to merging data frames. All right. So let's go here, and we got our sort values, and we're going to convert data types, which is 10. And I'm going to press escape and B to get some cells. Go back up. So we know, how do we see our data types? I'm going to bring in, actually, I'm going to bring in another data set. So I'm going to use PD. So this is a good kind of review. PD, I'm going to use DF5 and I'm going to use PD as our Pandas variable. Read CSV. And then I'm going to read in. I downloaded a data set and I'm going to press shift and right click, copy as path. I'm going to bring in that data. I'm going to change the slashes. And this is going to be some analytics data from Google Analytics. We know we can quickly look at the head of that, df5.head, to see what's inside there. Okay, let's see what maybe you can point out what I've done wrong here. Let's highlight the data type here. It is not a CSV file, it's an Excel file. So I'm going to run Excel, and because that file only has one particular sheet that I'm isolating, this may not be what I want. So I need to open that file back up. So the sheet name I'm looking for is this one, the dataset 2. So I go back over to my Jupyter Notebook, pass in the parameter, sheet name equals data. So now we have this here. So we know DF5 has 2 columns. Let's look at the data types by using the info, but you can also use another method. Since you're getting a lot of information, we can type in bonus, where we get everything, where we see there is a data type, and let's take a look. There is a date time data type. So now we know we have DF5 has a data type DF. Now a holiday data set, which is here, where we're looking at the US holidays, is our original DF. And if I go back up to our, and I type in DF and then info, we can see that the date is here, and it's an object. It is not a particular date time here. So I want to be able to change this date to this type of data type. And there's a couple ways we can do that. So first, I know I'm using this variable df, and I can use df to isolate that column with the brackets, right? We know we can save that over. So what I want to do is use a Pandas function to date time. And if you can see I write to date time or to numeric. So I'm going to use date time. And then I'm just going to, let me make some spaces here so you can see. Escape and B. And all I'm going to do is pass this in again. And this function is going to run over that. And then we know that we can look at this again. So let's run this function, run it. And then we can see that it's object here. If we run this again, we can see that we've changed the data type here into a date time. So we can use the to date time, to numeric to change things. And let's take a look at this section here in our month, where it's an integer. Maybe we don't want that to be a month. Maybe we want that to be a string. So let's first isolate the month column and just take a look at it by running that. And you can see that it's a number. But we are usually not going to take the average of a month or sum the months. We usually want to use that to group by. And it's always better to turn it into a string. Not always. So we can also use as type and pass it a string. And press Shift Tab. And you can see we can use different types. So I'm going to open that up and then pull this up for us to see. And you remember there's a lot of information here. We can get the different data types. You can change it to a Boolean, or you can also see we have the information here where we changed it to a date type. I'm going to change ours to a string. So I'm going to run that and then use df. I'm going to resave that month. And I don't know if we have it in place here. Let's see. No, we don't. So I'm going to change that data over to month and resave it and see if we get an error. Nope. And then we can look at the info again. Now you can see that month has turned into an object or string. So now if we group by that, we will not sum it, we'll just group by. So now we have two different data types that we were able to change. The last thing we're going to do is merge our data types. Now, you can see that we have if we look at our last data type, DF5, and we run that, we have a list of, so you can see that we have the date here, and we have a date for our holidays. So I can write in, DF here, and let's look at the top, df.head. So a lot of times it's always great to add, when we're looking at time series data, is to add some of the holidays to that. So we have the date here and we have the date here. Let's merge those two data frames on the date. So I am going to get our data frame, and I'm going to take the biggest one, which is our website visits here, and I'm going to merge using the merge. And let me bring this down a little bit so we can see it. Bring that up. Okay, and I'm going to close off that parentheses, and we can start looking at how. So we can see all the different parameters, and if you're familiar with SQL, you merge. There's different types of merges. There left merge, where we bring in all the rows and anything that matches that left side, and the right, anything that matches that right side, or inner. So let's bring that in. So DF is our particular holiday data set. So I want to use DF5, which is the biggest data set, and merge the holiday data set to that. So I'm going to use DF as the data frame that I want to merge. And then now, I want to merge the left table is the original table, DF5. So if we see DF5, we have date index. So left on, so we're telling it to merge left, the left column on, and we call that date index. And then we want to merge right. So our right table is going to be the table that you added. So left and right. So right on, and we know this column matches the day index column. So right on date. Now and then we can always specify how we want this to merge. And I'm just going to put left. So I want to preserve all the rows on the left, which is our big data frame that has all of our websites visit. And let's see if this works. So you can see that we've run that. We have a lot of missing values, right? Because there's not going to be a holiday on each one. So let's just call this merge. But let's see what if we say, before we do that, let's do different types of merges. Let's do inner. And if you see we do inner, we don't have any missing for that period of time. So we'll get a data frame with everything that matches. So I'm going to put left, and that's when we're going to have a lot of those missing values. And what I do is save this as merge. And maybe what I want to do is drop some of these columns that we have. And I'm going to show you as a bonus how to do that. Because we know we have the date. We know we have, we need the holiday, but we don't need these other columns. So I'm going to show you this. Now we can drop columns in two different ways. We can do a merge, which is the name of, and we can drop, and we can just specify the columns that we want to drop. So I can pass in a list of columns, and let me go and create a, and you remember we can see the columns here. So I'm going to press escape and B, and we can use columns, merge.columns. So I can pass in all of these columns that I don't want and eliminate everything there. So I get everything except, so I passed in that list of columns. Now I do not want to drop the holiday, so I can just remove this. And now if we want to drop this, we need to tell it how to drop it. Do you want to drop the rows or do you want to drop the columns? So 0 is the rows, the columns is 1. So is 1. So it's axis. Think about an axis. 0 is a row, 1 is an axis. So I have to tell it the axis to drop. Axis equals 1, and not negative 1, 1. And then I can shift tab that, and let's bring that information up. You can see we have in place equals true if we want to use that, or we can save over the data frame. So I'm just going to use in place equals true. So if we want that to be permanent, run that, and now let's take a look at our merge columns. So I'm just going to use columns. You can see that's all we have now. Now, if I press escape B and I take a look at the head of our columns, merge.head, now we have that holiday period. So I'm going to show you a bonus that we can do, because you have learned when we have missing values, we can fill it with something else. So I have a holiday here. So maybe what we do is say merge. Let me make some spaces here. BBB. Bring this up. And we say merge dot fit. Let's isolate that column. Holiday. And instead of fill in A with a value, maybe we pass it a string like no holiday. And then we do our in place equals true. And then maybe after that, we take a look at what we have. Oh, I misspelled holiday. Holiday. Now look, no holiday. So if we do a value count on holiday, we can see how many holidays and no holidays exist in the year. So let's use holiday dot value count. Close it. And there we go. So we've just had a little spelling mistake. So we can see there were 374 no holidays in our data set. And here are all the other holidays that we have. So what if we wanted to group by and see the average number of visits for these periods of time? How would you do that? Group by. So we can take our merge. We can group by. We can group by the holiday column. And then we want to pass in, well, we know we have our users to our website. and we want to see the average number of users. And we know we can do that by getting the mean and passing in that. And now we can see the mean of the visits during those particular days. And we can see which actually from our data set, holidays don't really benefit us, it seems, from a first glance. We can see some of the holidays at some of the lower periods. People are not visiting this website because we can see no holiday has the highest one. And maybe what we do is just go ahead and plot this, and then we do a bar. Oh, let me do a kind equals bar H. And then now we can see that quickly visualized into which holidays that are beneficial, because we can see that for this particular website, their holidays are not benefiting it. So that's just a really good, comprehensive, fundamental journey into Pandas, Python for data analysis. I hope that helps. If you have any other questions or anything, please leave them in the comment sections. I'll be happy to answer them when I have time. Thank you so much.